How much did you get to inherit?
Huh? My husband Simon asked me that on the night of my father's funeral.
I heard that your father had an inheritance of $3 million. So once again, I'm asking you, how much did you get to inherit?
I instantly had a bad feeling in the back of my mind when he asked me this question while I was still recovering from my grief, so I lied. It's 0. I don't get to inherit anything. It seems like my sister and my mother only got the inheritance. Hearing this, Simon gave out a huge smile.
Oh, I knew it! Your parents tell us that you are incompetent and didn't love you at all for sure. I'm glad that my instincts were correct.
What?
I want a divorce. I can't deal with you being poor now. I've already decided who I'm going to marry again, so I want you to just get out of my life now.
Then, Simon had made me sign the divorce papers. My husband and his family laughed at me for being miserable, but unfortunately, they are all wrong. People will never understand how happy I was when Simon actually betrayed me. My name is Jane. My family is a family of 4, and I have a younger sister named Kim, but Kim and I never got along well with each other since we were very young. My mother, Anne, was always taking Kim's side and defending her at every opportunity, which made me feel really lonely, even though I got used to it in the end. My father, Dan, who was the only one who was on my side and could help me, was always busy with work and rarely spent time at home. Even though I was always at home, I was tormented by loneliness during my childhood. My life at home had never changed even when I became an adult. I wasn't allowed to go to college because of the tuition fees. But after I got a job, I heard that Kim was going to enroll into a private college.
Kim is very bright, and it would be a waste if we didn't let her go to college at all. Jane, you're not at all sharp or smart, so unlike my Kim, it would definitely be a big waste for you to go there. Since you are already an adult who has a job, you should put some money into this house. And, in addition to that, you should also pay for Kim's tuition fee. You are her big sister, so it's only natural that you should work for her and support her. My mother says such nonsense things as if they were common sense to her. I had always put up with unfair things, but this made me furious, and tears began to run down my face. Seeing this, Kim looked at me unpleasantly and tells me this. It's your own fault that you're incompetent, isn't it? You're uglier than me, and you get worse grades than me, so you should at least try harder to be better, you know? If you can't even do that, then you're just seriously worthless.
I got so fed up with this kind of toxic family environment, so I left my parents' house when I began to work. Since I was forced to do house chores on a daily basis, living alone was not at all hard for me, and in fact, it felt great to be able to be all on my own. In the beginning, my father sent me a little money to help out, but after about 6 months, he stopped sending me some money. Instead, I received a letter from my mother.
It seems that your father has been sending money to you without any permission, but you have no right to receive it because you have never paid your sister's school fees or send any money to us. I'll send you an invoice for all the amount you received from your father later on, so make sure to refund all the money. Stop being a thief. My mother, who continues to hate me,
sent me an invoice that was calculated in exact amount as alimony for me to refund the amount. I was very uncomfortable to talk and argue about it any further, so I did as I was told, sent the money, and secretly moved to another apartment. A few years later, I got married to Simon, whom I met at work. I decided to take this opportunity to cut ties with my parents for good, so I went back to my parents' house to inform them about my marriage. I returned to my parents' house to inform the news, only to find that my father, who had always been working very hard, aged a lot and looked very old. I didn't expect his waist to be bent that much, and it looked like it was hard for him to even stand up.
Oh, so you're back. I wonder what this ungrateful girl who doesn't even send any money home to her parents is doing here.
When I asked my mother about my father, she snickered at me.
Your father had a back injury in the past year or so, and he can't work anymore. It's bad enough that he has to always stay home and get in my way all the time, but it's worse because he's too lazy to move around on his own. Now, he's just as useless as you, Jane.
Simon was surprised to hear my mother say this, but his eyes lit up when he saw my sister, Kim.
Whoa, are you Jane's sister? You are very beautiful. I can't really believe that you and Jane are sisters.
Kim had become even more selfish since she entered college, and now she was wearing luxurious clothes and had such a flashy hair color that it looked quite embarrassing knowing that she's an adult. She is old enough that she should have already graduated from college, but she still seems to be a student, which also shows her attitude towards studying college.
This guy is your husband, Jane? Well, he's pretty cool and handsome. He doesn't match with you at all, Jane. And I actually feel sorry for you, Simon.
My sister was intentionally talking sweetly to Simon and making body touches with him in a way that I could see. I didn't like that either, but it was much more painful to see Simon looking so happy and excited to be treated like that from Kim. Anyways, I don't intend to stay here long. I'm going to marry Simon. I'm going to cut off my ties with you all.
Well, if you're going to cut me off, can you do it after I'm done taking care of your father?
My mother said in a tiresome way as she was eating her snacks. I need to take care of him, but I don't want to do that at all, and I don't want Kim to go through that kind of hardship either. It's her college life after all, and it would be a pity to make her spend all her time on such a trivial, annoying matter, right? So, you should be responsible and be the one to take care of your father, Jane. You and your father are both incompetent, so you both would get along very well with each other. The way my mother said this made me very angry, but I couldn't ignore about taking care of my father, for my father's sake. From that day on, I had to go to my parents' house frequently to take care of my father. After I started taking care of my father, I realized that neither my mother nor my sister worked. Kim doesn't do any part-time job, and my mother has always stayed at home since my father collapsed. And yet, they both tend to eat out at restaurants and shopped a lot. To my surprise, they took my father's bank book without his permission and spent their savings as if it was a normal thing to do. My father knew about it, but he kept quiet. Dad, they'll continue to do this if we don't do something about it, you know. If you knew about this, why didn't you tell me right away?
Even if I told you, Jane, they would never think that they did something wrong and apologize about it. So, I didn't want this to be a burden to you in any way. I've already put you through so much.
My father was always working, but it was for the sake of our family. He was the only one in the family who loved me very much. I wanted to just help him somehow. Just as I was thinking of a way to do so, I received a call from the hospital where my father had been taken since he had collapsed. Before heading to the hospital, I hurried to my parents' house. My mother and sister were both watching TV, looking unworried and concerned. The hospital called me. Father collapsed, didn't he? Why are you both just sitting still? What an exaggeration to even say that he collapsed. He just fell down in the hallway and hit his head. The ambulance took him to the hospital, so I'll leave the rest to you. We need to go to the hospital. I'm worried about Father. Shut up. If he doesn't make it, then the insurance will pay for it. What are you getting so emotional about? My mother just said that and turned her gaze back to the TV again. Disgusted, I left them both and headed for the hospital. At the hospital, my father was lying in bed, hooked up to various tubes, and he was barely conscious. As he was losing consciousness, my father noticed me and let out a faint voice.
I'm sorry for being so sudden. I'm sure I'm just being punished. I was an unfit father because I couldn't protect you from our family.
With saying these as his last words, my father closed his eyes. I don't care about that. Dad, I love you, so please get well soon, okay? I desperately held my father's hand at his bedside, but he never held it back again. A week later, I received a call from a lawyer who had my father's will. He told me that the will contained information about my father's inheritance.
According to the will, you, Jane, is to inherit $3 million.
$3 million? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In fact, it seemed that there was another bank book that my father had hidden apart from the savings book my mother had taken from me, in which $3 million were being kept. He also wrote a note that he would not tell any other family members about this. I guess this was his own way of trying to take care of me after I inherited the money. I was again moved by my father's kindness. Then, I had to go back to my parents' house to retrieve the hidden bank book. Then, my mother and sister were waiting for me at the front door, standing like they were the queens of the house.
What are you doing here now?
Did you come to scavenge for things because Dan died? How despicable.
Everything in the house is mine and my mother's to inherit. This house, the car, everything. So don't come here like a thief.
I could never talk about my inheritance with these people who would never even try to listen to me. Wait a minute. I'm just here to collect Father's memorabilia. Besides, shouldn't I inherit at least a small share? Then, my mother pulled out a document and showed it to me. It was another will. The will said that my mother and sister would inherit all of my father's estate. It was written, but the handwriting was clearly my sister's handwriting. It was hard to believe that it was the handwriting of my father, who had a very unique, distinct handwriting. I couldn't really read the will very well since Kim didn't have a really good handwriting. Are you trying to say that this is Father's will? Your thoughts won't matter because this is the will. I have already informed all the details to all our relatives, and all the neighbors know about it too. It's impossible to accuse anything now. My mother wouldn't even let me take a step into the house, knowing that I knew that this was a fake will. When I gave up and went home that day, Simon was waiting for me at home.
Were you at your parents' house? If you had told me, I would have gone with you too. What a shame. I wanted to see Kim.
Why are you so concerned, and how is any of this related to you, Simon? I went there to receive Father's inheritance, but they both kicked me out.
Wow. How much did you all get to inherit from your father?
I don't know how much it is in total, but the house, land, and everything was all in his name, so the total amount must be pretty significant.
I see. Then how much is your share of the inheritance, Jane?
That's... After saying that much, I closed my mouth. I shouldn't tell him the truth here. My instincts told me that. There was no inheritance for me. It was going to be split between just my mother and sister. Hearing this, Simon suddenly brought the divorce papers from his room and presented them to me.
I knew it! I knew you wouldn't get to inherit anything. You really are hated by that family. Well, with a perfect sister like that, no wonder, huh? But being inherited with nothing, I mean, how much do they hate you? I want a divorce now because there's nothing in it for me if we stay together. Actually, I've been in touch with your sister Kim a lot lately. And to be honest, you're just in my way.
Simon had already signed his part on the divorce papers. So, of course, I signed the papers right away. I tried hard not to smile as I watched Simon's back as he happily took the divorce papers to the city office. This would probably be the last time I would see Simon smile like that. And that includes my mother and my sister too. This was the moment when karma bit back to those who had been tormenting my father and I for all these years. Later that day, I consulted with the lawyer who had taken care of my father's will and asked him to come with me to my parents' house. There, when I showed both my mother and my sister the real will, their usual relaxed expressions turned blue, and they read it over and over again.
That's a lie! I have a will over here that properly states that only Kim and I would inherit.
Then let's do a handwriting analysis. If you say that the fake one was made intentionally, then you'll be charged with fraud. Will that be all right with you?
When the lawyer said that, my mother was at a loss for words to reply.
I have also heard from Dan about a lot of other things. I heard that even after his health deteriorated, you abandoned him and stopped taking care of him, sold all his possessions without any permission, and did whatever you wanted to do. And Kim was addicted to playing around with men and gambling, and paid off all the debts she made out from his personal bank book without any permission. Because of such malicious behavior, you both have been excluded from any inheritance rights. If you further unfairly violate Jane's inheritance rights, we intend to file a lawsuit against you both as well.
By the time the lawyer finished speaking, both my mother and sister were sitting there in despair. In the meantime, I decided to collect my father's hidden bank book and leave my parents' house. With this, I was finally completely free from my family. After that, Simon, who knew nothing about it, apparently confessed to my sister to go out with him. Then, my mother and sister, who kept all the inheritance issues as a secret from him, immediately married him in order to make him pay for their living expenses and for him to become an ATM machine to them. Then, without being told the truth, he apparently bought several luxury cars and quit his job in order to rely on their inheritance. After some time, Simon noticed something strange. Finally, he had realized that they had no inheritance and rushed to contact me.
Jane, I was wrong. You're all I have. I want to start over.
Well, I don't need you. And besides, you have Kim now. You have to take care of your wife properly, okay? I only told him that and gently hung up the phone. In fact, a few minutes before Simon called, I had received a call from Kim as well.
You've ruined my life. Simon quit his job and went on a shopping spree like a fool as soon as he and I got married. I can't believe that a man who only cares about money became my husband. Because of him, my family name is ruined. So, what are you going to do about it?
I spoke slowly to my sister, who was screaming hysterically. Kim, you're the one who is only interested in money too, just like him. I think you're a matching couple, you know. Besides, I heard that you and Simon got along very well while Simon and I were married. You should just be happy with the fact that your love came true. I'll file a claim for compensation for the affair later, though, okay? From now on, let's contact each other through our lawyers. I never, ever want to hear from you again.
Hey! I'm your sister, and you're not even treating me like a family?
Ha! Don't make me laugh. You're the one who didn't treat me like family. Saying that, I hung up on my sister. I blocked her calls and never heard from her again. I was finally free. Now, I built a house with my father's inheritance and moved into it. I have found a new job as an office clerk, and I'm enjoying a busy but fulfilling life on my own. Sometimes I do feel lonely, but I have my family to take care of me. I'm going now, Dad. I felt my father smiling gently over me as I looked the picture of my father on the wall of my house.